Chris, I'm so happy to see the Grandmaster of all dragons.
Oh, hello on and hello all of our viewers. Welcome back to
Hi.
another Dragon Monthly Wowie. Looking forward
Yes.
to this one.
Yeah, me too. I'm always looking forward to chat with you. Even if we would talk about, I don't know, the bees and the life of Brian and whatever comes to mind, we would just have a
Life of Brian.
blast.
Now that was a good film. That was a good. Anyhow, let's not digress too soon. Yeah. So we're here for another dragon, of course, and I
Yes.
have another game for you, and this is related, incredibly enough, to last month's game, which was some will remember was in the old main line variation. I'm going to talk us through the moves, and I had a game of my own, from the Four Nations Chess League, and I
Oh,
figured I'd better basically include it. So I'm going to get to the key position, then I'll do a little bit more talking. So of course here we are, familiar territory now, no hanging around, Sicilian dragon straight away, and the Yugoslav Attack variation, of course. Queen d2 and 9 castles, as
how,
you've so named it.
so I have to mention, of course, how nice that people let you play the dragon, right? Although they know
Well,
that.
can I just point out, you might think it's nice, but when it happens to me, I know it means they have prepared
Oh,
victory. So it doesn't. That's
true.
not such. So it's a kind of double-edged sword for me, basically.
You are right. Let's see if Chris knows about this
Because it's not
move.
like they're going, oh, I didn't know he was going to play the dragon. I thought it was going to be the Caracan or something. Oh, that sea pawn's gone one extra square down the board.
Yeah,
No, so it's a kind of double-edged sword.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
But I can tell you, I did prepare. My opponent in this game is a kind of youngish FIDE master, reasonably high-rated guy. And I did do some preparation for him, and he played literally every opening under the sun. Knight F3, D4, E4, C4.
Wow.
I thought, this is... And usually I think, well, they're never going to play a Dragon Yugoslav Attack because they must know I know something about it. And it's not as though he plays it all the time. So I figured I wasn't expecting that. Anyhow,
Yeah, this is
so
this
here we
is a
go.
surprise. Yeah.
We got this position, and I thought, well, I tell you what, I did a Dragon Monthly on this last week. I'm going to do exactly the same variation. So
Just
lo and
for
behold,
for the show.
just for the show. Now, I really wanted to say that I actually, unlike maybe some people, I'm not even going to mention any names. I don't even know why I said that, but I practice what I preach. If I tell you guys it's reasonable, I'm prepared to play it myself. Otherwise, I will be a fake or something like that. So
Very good.
anyhow, we have this position here. You know only too well. White can, of course, grab a pawn here on d5 immediately if they'd like to, but not in this particular variation. Bishop d4 was played. And still, of course, I'm not sure we've featured it in a main game yet, but there's the chance to take and go Queen b6. That's definitely going to appear at some stage. It's one of the main variations, but still the old main line sees black playing e5, saying no thanks, I don't want to swap off the pieces. I accept that I've got little weaknesses here on a7 and c6. I don't just want to do fair swaps and end in some endgame where I'm going to be groveling looking after my pawns. The bishop comes to c5 and black plays bishop to e6. Now, you know only too well, we've discussed it so many times, white will take that rook at his peril, because then there will be mega pressure with this pawn eventually coming to e4 against b2. So nobody takes that rook.
Yeah.
Knight comes to e4, and black says, "Oh, thank goodness you didn't take it."
That's a bluff.
No, he doesn't say that. That was complete. So the rook moves to e8, and I think I explained to you before. In the old days, I used to play rook b8, but then I noticed that actually it's quite useful to have your rook still behind your pawn. So even though rook b8 activates the rook. So anyway, this is exactly what happened last night, and this is the main line of this variation. And here I think I explained last month that typical here, white is obviously looking to go h5. And this is quite dangerous now, because with the bishop controlling this square here, if white can blast open the h file and get their queen over to h2, it's literally going to be checkmate down there on h7. So it's kind of quite important that black doesn't allow that h file to become open. And the standard play by far is for black to go h6. And generally the idea is that you're going to meet g5 with h5 or h5 with g5. So whichever way you do it, white gets the choice of which way to do it, but either way you keep the g and the h file closed. But last month I brought you a very interesting game where black actually played a strong player, played the move h5 immediately, which is it's not a novelty by any means, but it's comparatively rare. H6 is definitely the main move. And the reason why is because this does obviously allow white the option to challenge this structure immediately. Potentially there's some squares here on g5 for the knight to come to, but that's maybe not such a big deal because there's a pin, for example. And the inspiration, therefore, for this game for me was that one that we covered last week, where white immediately sprung with g4. And rather than take it and allow h5 and king exposed, black played knight f4. So this is what we featured last month. And it was a really nice game where basically black put the bishop on d5, and then the knight ultimately came back here and had the option to come into d4. So if you haven't seen that yet, and any of the viewers, I would highly recommend revisiting it. I'm pretty sure you'd have done it, but I would highly recommend you checking that one out because,
Absolutely, 100%. First of all, it's a great episode, and second of all, I think we can reach 1,000 views at least in the next weeks.
Excellent. So that would be fantastic. A really good game. So I thought, I'm going to go for that again. So I played h5, and my opponent immediately bashed out bishop c4.
Maybe they saw this episode too.
Yeah. I'm thinking to myself, in contrast to Arno, I would have preferred there was one less viewer for that video last month. So we're going in the opposite directions, you and I.
Yeah, true.
So bishop to c4, and I had actually, I vaguely mentioned this in the notes. Now I'm going to have to bring people down to earth here. My memory isn't actually that fantastic. So I do remember I basically commented briefly on this move in the notes. Do feel free to go back on that move. But like I said, I was kind of hoping, inverted commas, for g4 on the same line that we covered last week. So bishop c4 was played, and I thought about it, and I vaguely recalled that I mentioned the move knight to f4 in this position here. And there's a possibility for the queens coming off for an equalish kind of endgame. There was a couple of other possible variations. I couldn't exactly remember it all. I did start thinking, but about trying to recover those notes that I'd kind of in my mind. I knew they were there. But then I thought, no, Chris, you're a grandmaster. How about you come up with your own ideas? And I thought, you know what? I don't really want the queen quite so early. This is a Sicilian dragon. I want some attacking lines. So I thought, no, I'm not going to do that.
Action.
And instead I played the move queen c7.
Yes.
And I knew I could sense what was going to happen now because I did quite a lot of analysis. The other thing is this game was played at a very slow time rate, probably one of the slowest time rates I've played in quite a long time. So basically, I think we got an hour and 40 minutes for 40 moves with an increment, and then we were due to get another 50 minutes with an increment.
Oh, lovely.
So a nice slow, but I managed to use that time up pretty quickly. It's always going over the game. You think, why on earth was I spending my time on?
Yeah, it's a trap. You know you have so much time, and out of a sudden oh no, it's happened again.
All of a sudden it's gone. So I played queen c7. So the idea is pretty clear. I'm looking to bring a rook, actually not necessarily that rook, possibly the other rook, but probably the A rook, to the same line as the queen, after which I'll have discovered attacks by moving my knight to various possible squares. But I knew what was going to happen now, and indeed it did. White played g4 now, striking out here.
Fearless.
So now, essentially, this is what I thought. I thought, okay, this is I'm certainly not planning on taking that pawn and allowing h5. So I played rook a d8. This is always my intention. And this game gets completely crazy. And I can do a warning now, it's by no means perfect.
Don't try this at home.
The worst thing about it, don't try it. Well, no. They are supposed to be trying it at home.
Try it at home, yeah.
Right. All right. Now, the only problem is, the annoying thing is when you come home, you think, I played a really nice game there. And you stick on the engine and you think, maybe not that nice.
Blunders 5.
Rook 88. The worst thing is when you still disagree with the computer, even after no, he's wrong. He's definitely wrong. Right. So anyway, so rook 88. So this is what happened. And now white took my pawn on h5. So I knew this was going to be what happened. And it probably goes without saying, I'm not really interested in taking that pawn back and having my G file completely open like that. Not really looking forward to that. So it was all really here about me utilizing a discovered attack in this position here. So where should I move my knight? I know where I wanted it to, and I did indeed move it to the square f4.
Yeah,
I
this
did also
was.
consider playing the move knight to b6.
Yeah, this is
So,
interesting then.
so the
But
idea is, of course, here is I'm attacking the bishop on c4. So there were a couple of crazy lines which I did consider. So, for example, after bishop to d6, a self pin, and I take here, and they take my queen, and then I take their queen, and they take my rook, and then I go here. This kind of
oh,
worked out to be okay for me. I think this takes, but I was a little bit nervous about a couple of things. For example, the possibility of white just dropping the bishop back to d3, so saving the queen and the bishop, and then I'm a bit devoid of defenders over on the king side.
yeah.
And another move which I wasn't exactly ecstatic about was this was more complicated, was queen g5, and then I'm seriously a bit nervous about my king position. Well, it's going to go without saying throughout this whole episode that I was nervous about my king position. let's just accept that as a guarantee. Now, so instead I played the move knight f4.
Yeah.
And I have to say this is a pretty useful square for my knight, because it does, yeah, sure, it eyes up the e2 square potentially, and it can potentially take it, but it's just a good blocker. It stops the white queen from descending on my king side. So I played the move knight f4, hoping to regain the pawn here. So the idea is, if the queen was just to move somewhere now, then I'm simply going to take that pawn with my knight, and I've achieved the aim of kind of keeping the h-file closed. So knight f4. So now exactly what was expected. And when I went over this game with my opponent afterwards, we both agreed bishop d6 both seemed to be a critical move. It's kind of a self-pin, but on the other hand, it is gaining a tempo against my queen, because he's threatening to take the queen, whereas when I take his queen, I lose my whole rook for it, of course. So I have to do something about this. And still alive, of course, is this situation over here. So I haven't got time now to take that ball. So I've got to move my queen. Where do I move the queen to? I had three serious candidates for where to move my queen. One of them was to move the queen to b6, where I thought I might potentially be good over here. It might potentially cover some squares over there. But in the end, and also queen b7 is kind of a halfway house. But in the end, I decided to move my queen back to c8.
Oh.
And the reason why was because I had potentially, with these being traded off, I had two possibilities. The queen could come out this way, and the queen could potentially that way as well. So that's why I decided on queen c8.
Okay.
So I played queen c8, and now, so this is one of the reasons why I'd spent so much time here. For example, I looked at h takes g6 with absolutely nuts complications here. One move I could just do is just ignore the and push my pawn up to f5, looking to destabilize still further this bishop here, and we've got these bishops attacked. Or even, and one line I'd really looked at was bishop takes c4, g takes f7 check, or even h5. So I'm a piece up, but those pawns are descending down there.
Goodness.
Bishop takes f7 and rook hg1. So where I'd actually be a piece up, and queen e6. Now I had this very good plan actually in this position with black. It's called keeping my fingers crossed, basically. I find sometimes it works about half of the time. So
yeah, it's a very big part of your Fritz Trainer series. That
Fritz, keeping my fingers crossed. So anyway, so that would leave me a piece up. But in general, I was expecting him to play the move he did, which is to push his pawn up to h6. And we can see now his pawn is obviously attacking my dragon bishop, but also there's a little gap opened up here. So let's just talk about possibilities here. So one of the complications here, which we both looked at, and I wasn't that ecstatic about, was what happens if I take that that pawn, because after all, things are going on over here. Well, the line I looked at was knight to f6 check. Now I have to move my king to a square where he doesn't take the rook with check. So there's only one of those. That would be h8. Then he can take my rook.
Yeah, but then
I can go knight e2.
Exactly, yeah.
Queen takes, rook takes d2, and now, of course, I can take
Oh,
that knight.
okay. Yeah, well, okay, it is unclear.
Check. But now he's actually got a rook, a bishop, and a pawn for a queen, and
Yeah,
potentially going to
pushing
flick
on
in
h5.
h5. Actually,
Yeah,
the engine, of course,
heh,
assesses is equal.
no problem.
He just says it's equal, just a draw. Why are you even bothering me with this line? But I figured I didn't really like my queen. I didn't really like the holy dark squares.
No, this
I
is
didn't
super
really fancy it.
scary.
I didn't fancy it too much. So I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that at all. And what I
Yeah.
did was, after h6, I played bishop takes c4,
Oof.
and he played h takes g7.
Oof.
So now I've lost my dragon bishop, basically.
Oh no.
Let's face it.
Let's
So,
face it.
however, I'm still doing okay here, but my next move was ridiculously provocative, actually. I don't know why I do moves like this. So essentially here, I could have just continued with a nice simple move. Queen
Queen
e6.
e6, exactly.
I think that's a nice idea. It covers a big square here on f6.
Mhm.
It attacks the bishop. It eyes up bishop to e2. I mean, there's still a very murky position, but
Yeah.
I think that would definitely have been a better move than what I played. I actually played queen f5, super provocative. The reason I played that was mainly because I wanted to retain the option of putting my rook to e6 instead of my queen. But but there was one variation where I now have to accept I was perhaps a little bit optimistic. What the idea was to lure this knight to g3, which, by the way, is a move he didn't play, knight to g3. Now here there would be a couple of ideas, but one of them was if I went queen e6 now. So the idea is I've lured that knight away from e3, so it's not eyeing up f6. But after here h5, I figured, I could actually just block those two pawns over there, and I could, after here, I could just stay completely rock solid, no way to get through to the
Look
king
at
like
this
that.
position, how funny the pawns are situated there.
Yeah, so I felt, and interestingly enough, we both felt this would be quite a solid position for me, but the engine is not quite so enamored with it. He sort of suggests that White can maybe start bringing his queen out around the side and doing things over here on a5, and I'm thinking, oh well, what a spoil sport he is, isn't he? I was just thinking about king positions and checkmates, and the computer's thinking about winning pawns.
Such a party pooper.
He just doesn't really get it. Although another line which I felt I had, which also engines generally don't like, was in this position here. After knight g3 attacking my queen, I could take this. Could take this here on d6.
Goodness.
Queen takes d6. Knight check. Takes, and then, for example, here I'm attacking the rook and the f3 pawn.
Yeah.
Now, if we get an endgame like this, I do just want to say something a little bit about this. I'm the exchange down. But my experience is if you can get connected past pawns and retain the rook and the bishop, to not have the rook swapped off, these are actually quite murky. So if you see a situation whereby, I'm going to win that, he's going to get that, but I'm going to have two connected past pawns, they can actually be quite a lot of trouble. So an outside A pawn isn't such a big deal when I've got a bishop and a rook monitoring. So that would be possible as well, but still not really ideal. I was leaning towards the blockading situation with the h6 and g7, but in retrospect, as I mentioned, I should have played queen e6. I shouldn't have gone queen f5. In any instance, my opponent didn't want to move his knight from e4 anyway, so we were both blissfully unaware of what should be happening in this game here, both of us. And he played h5, just, looking to open things, after which I said, yeah, thanks very much, that I'll have that pawn.
Wow, and
of course,
the G7 blocker helps you.
Yeah, the idea is his own pawn is kind of in his way at the moment here. So
nice.
This is crazy stuff. So I think, yeah, okay, that's fine. And again, now he continued as I thought he might do. One of my ideas is obviously I'm now looking to, okay, I'm not really after that necessarily yet, but I'm certainly, I can drop that bishop back to d5 to pressurize this on d6, for example. I've also got this square here eyed up. He played rook dg1. Rook dg1 in this position here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first things should be noticed that I'm not interested in winning that.
Yeah,
winning that rook.
You guys are offering your rooks all the time.
He was quite a teased my knight away on several occasions here. But let's do a little bit of analysis in our head. If I go knight e2 check and take that rook, then queen h6 is a bit of a killer, really, because he's
That
threatening queen h8.
yeah, that's not
check.
fun.
And if I then let's try to do this to go queen h7 to block, then this time around
Knight
the knight
f6.
f6, and that's why I was looking to lure that knight away. So I was never really interested in taking that, but I did feel at the time that my opponent was threatening rook to g5.
Oh goodness.
So the move I played next I thought was a fairly logical and solid move, which is to go f6 now, because I'm tidying up some squares here.
Wow.
I'm also giving my bishop the option to retreat to f7 if I wanted to, which felt quite natural. Although I did miss a tactic here that I could have played, which is kind of annoying, but I'm going to blame everything on time travel because I was already getting short on time, as was my opponent here. So the move that I could have played in this position here, which would have been really nice, was to go rook e6. Simply my original plan, right? Now, ganging up on that. Now, why didn't I do that? Was because I felt the rook g5 was threatened.
Yeah.
But then I could go queen takes, give my queen up for that rook, and then take this. Now, the problem is, I'm threatening, if he goes too far afield with his queen, I'm simply threatening knight e2 check and a back rank checkmate.
That is beautiful.
And if he goes queen e1, then bishop e2.
Oh yeah, that I didn't see even. Yeah. Oh, that
would have been quite neat. So rook e6 is what I should have played, but I played the move f6 because I felt it was a nice tidying up type move to play in this position, basically. Still, the game goes on, and after here, let's see, what did he do? He played king b1 now, so he's putting an end to all these sort of funny checks on e2 and all the rest of it. And I played bishop d5, so I still felt quite comfortable here because I felt my king was relatively safe. My bishop here, maybe I'm probably threatening just to take that knight and win a pawn, which of course would potentially, I'm obviously still a little bit nervous about my king, but so long as my knight remains on f4, I felt, and this was the key thing, keeping that knight on f4, I thought that's great. So now finally, my opponent decides, well, okay, he's got to move his queen, he's got to do something here. Of course, he can't move his bishop, because then it'll be bishop takes a2 check would win his queen, of course.
Yeah.
So he moved queen to b4, where the queen is still protecting the bishop and it's protecting the knight laterally, so offering some protection. And I now dropped queen to e6, which was deemed by the engines to be a good move. Well done, congratulations, pat on the back for me. Queen e6, and the other reason was obviously I felt, well, I might just take that pawn if allowed, which. Okay, well, he did play bishop f8. Is now, as we can see, is in a bit of a pickle with this bishop. I'm threatening bishop takes knight and taking that bishop. So he played bishop f8. It feels very weird, I can tell you, when your opponent's got a pawn on g7 and a bishop on f8.
That is.
When I'm normally used to having a dragon bishop on g7. So it's so anyway, I took this pawn here, check. I thought, thanks, I'll have a pawn, and then I'll come back. So one of the reasons why I thought, oh, this is good. Not only have I won a pawn, but I thought that king could be potentially exposed here. So, for example, in some lines, I might be able to get a swizzly rook a4 and queen a2 and king c1. Although I soon realized that was flawed because he could actually block the check by bringing his bishop back.
Oh gosh, it's so far away. You don't see that.
Yeah, backward bishop moves. They're not so easy to stop, but it would still be okay. But there we go. So now it's him to move here, and this position is just completely nuts. And I can tell you, we were just short on time here. He played rook h4. Probably not a good move, but it's not really clear what he can actually do in this position here. There's no obvious way for him obviously to break through on the king's side. I do believe the engine recommendation is to go knight c5 and then go back to e4 again. So I think he obviously doesn't have too many plans for progression. So he played rook h4, and now we get down to a typical nut situation. I thought, I'm going to take that knight now, simplify so that I can now squizzle my rook up to d4. Yeah, it was around about here then that I noticed that actually that isn't as effective.
Yeah.
The bishop block. But queen e3, and I just doubled the rooks. I just thought this is pretty good. I'm a pawn up.
Can't be wrong.
Again, because of this situation over here, I'm dominating the center of the board. This looks fine. He played b3 to stop that check, giving his king a little bit of leeway. I suppose I could have just swapped off the rooks here, but in the spur of the moment, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to keep edging forward a little bit with queen f5. This actually seems to be a very reasonable move. And now he dropped his rook back to h2. So now eventually, I thought, okay, around about now I realized, I've got to get 8 moves played to reach the time control, basically. Then I'll get another 50 minutes and I can squander that as
think
well.
again of it.
So rook to d1 check. Takes.
Now the simplifying, yeah.
Now here again, I missed a golden opportunity, which would have been quite nice. But I think the move I played is pretty rock solid. I basically dropped my queen back to d7 here, dominating the d file and threatening to go to d4 because an endgame, I am pawn up in the endgame now, and it's looking with an outside h pawn in this g7 pawn. So I play queen d7, although I did miss the possibility of queen g5, which is very strong as well. Because
discovered, yeah.
And if he moves his queen, the chance to do
something. That's nice.
Rank. So that would have been quite a nice move. I played queen d7, which seems fine, all the same. And he dropped his bishop back to c5. So again, I'm short on time. I want to play moves which are solid, slightly progressive, not giving any ground. So I brought my queen up to d5, which I thought was a nice natural move to play, kind of pressurizing that bishop on c5. And now is where the position gets absolutely crazy. And I mean, totally crazy. So I'm sitting here thinking, I'm down to my last few seconds, but I'm getting a small increment each time. I've got to make 5 or 6 more moves. Well, I'm thinking, I'm okay. He can't do anything good. And suddenly he plays rook g2. Completely a move I didn't want to see when I
mouse slip. Yeah.
I'm thinking, but now what's going on there?
I see. With the knight goes away. Yeah.
So the first few seconds, this is really annoying. I tell you why this is so annoying. Because, well, here, faced with this move and only a few seconds, you have to maximize. You have to really use that time. So the first few seconds are deciding, has he just blundered and can I just take the rook? Because he's as short as me on time. And then I'm thinking, hang on, knight takes g2, queen h6. How do I stop queen h8? King f7, but then he goes queen h8. How do I stop that pawn from queening? And I'm thinking, I don't know, can I block it with my queen? But then he goes bishop f8, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, can I take that? Right, then thinking, okay, but what's he actually threatening? Is he threatening anything? No, maybe not. So let's just carry on. Now, only if, Anna, I had time on my clock. And this is a really good lesson for everybody to learn. My golden rule, whatever level, and I say to them, I always do this. I say, my golden number 1 rule, look out for checks. Those are checks that you can do and checks that your opponent is threatening to do. Now, had I done that, but unfortunately I didn't have the time, then I would definitely have spotted that I could just play the move knight to d3 check in this position here. So the point would be, I'm of course attacking the bishop here. I'm threatening to win the bishop free of charge. So he takes it. He would have to take it, and then rook takes d3, and suddenly everything is going to fall down in the white position. He's not yet threatening anything. He's not got any checks. Queen c1 check, and I win his queen, and then the game for sure. I would have spotted knight d3 check with any sort of time on my clock, because I always look out for checks just in case. But unfortunately, after rook g2, I had to prioritize the use of my time, and I didn't have time. But even then, I'm kicking myself. Just a couple of seconds to look out for knight d3. But I was so flummoxed by that rook g2 move, thinking, can I just take that?
Yeah. Just in case it doesn't work, which can always happen, and then your time is gone, and now you have 3 seconds left, and then you just take,
exactly,
and then you lose. So
that is absolutely
difficult.
Absolutely, it's a very difficult situation. So here we are.
A beautiful tactic, by the way. Beautiful.
A beautiful tactic. Knight d3. But I tell you, that is always my number 1 advice. Look out for checks, just in case. So rook g2. So eventually I just suddenly decided my flat was literally 5, 4, 3.
Oh, goodness.
Right, well, play a move. He's not threatening anything. Play a move then that looks vaguely useful and doesn't affect my position. And I thought, h4. Why not? I've got a pass pawn here. Let's go from a pass pawn. It's only 3 squares away from turning into a new queen. Well, have I conceded anything by doing that? No. And then he goes rook g4, and I thought, oh yeah, I have done something. I have conceded something. I've conceded that square.
Out of a
He
sudden,
plays
yeah.
g4, and now I'm thinking, oh my word, what is going on? So he's threatening that pawn. Is he really? What else is he really doing? Is he threatening to take on f4? I don't know. But then I'm not far from queening. So I played h3, where of course,
Oh
guess what?
goodness. He
Knight
takes.
d3 check would still be
Yeah,
winning,
yeah,
of
of
course.
course, yeah.
But I'm still thinking, what about my h pawn? What about my knight? Is he threatening to take it? I thought h3. Come on, I'm getting a new queen here. Am I probably? And both of us here were thinking he's probably going to go rook h4. But then, of course, okay, so h3. So now he played.
He takes the knight,
Rook
no?
takes f4.
Yeah,
He's taking
exactly.
my knight. And now I had a complete hallucination. I'm thinking, oh my word, just a few seconds. But the truth of the matter, the absolute truth, is I could just take this.
You can just take there. You can just take the pawn, right? Yeah.
He's not actually, he's just not threatening any. He's not threatening a perpetual check. Everything's covered, and it's just all he's got there is, I can bring my king out. I can, it's just, oh man, he's not even threatening. I can dance around that bishop.
That's difficult.
Not threatening, it's just, oh, so sad. So I could have just taken this, right? So this is where the game is. I mean, it's just getting totally nuts.
Yeah.
So
but then if I may quickly say also taking this, and I mean, this is also part of this time trouble experience, right? You're trying to, or he tried to make this as complicated.
I love the way you call it an experience, like it's going to visiting a fun fair or something like that.
It is kind of like that, right? You don't pay the ticket, but yeah, it is like a roller coaster ride. But of course he tries to make the position as complicated as possible.
Of course.
And yeah.
I mean, of course, this is what you expect, and this is what, when you're in a bad position and when there's time travel, you just want to mess it up as much as you possibly could.
Yeah.
So it's naturally just going to be in his tactic. But I'm thinking I've only got 2 more moves to reach the time control. Just keep it calm for a little bit longer. But of course, typically all the action happens just when you don't want it to happen. I'm thinking, why did I move my H pawn? Why couldn't I move my A pawn, for example? But then, so all these things. So he goes rook takes f4. But actually, at this moment, I was still thinking, oh, well, what do I do here? Do I take that rook? Has he got a check? I'm going to look like a right lemon if it's checkmate down there, aren't I? So I thought h2, brilliant. Let's just get a new queen. He's not really threatening anything. What's going to go on there?
But now rook h4 or?
So, and this is now, look at this. So this is what he did. He now played rook h4. Fortunately for me, I blundered and he responded with a blunder. We're going to come back to that in a second.
Okay.
This is basically what happens. He plays rook h4. But what he misses is that when I get my queen, after he gets his queen, I don't have to take that rook with my queen. So if I'd taken it here, you can see he's going to get a queen. His queen's going to descend. And it's actually only a perpetual check. But he thinks he's going to get at least a perpetual. But of course, what I can do is just take that pawn straight away. And then he doesn't have anything. And this is what happens in the game. We'll come back to that in a second. But, oh my word, Anna, this is it. What he should have done is just taken this pawn on f6 and let me get another queen.
I didn't even see that. I didn't even see that you can take on f6.
I actually noticed it around about here while he was thinking about his rook h4, thinking, what am I going to do if he takes that pawn? So what I mean, essentially then the idea is I can either get a new queen, which is going to leave me throw me to the wolves of the wolves in this case being queen, a rook and a bishop trying to checkmate me. That doesn't look too promising. Like, for example, check, and pretty much checkmate.
Good night.
Would not be good news for me. Or I could think, no, I need a tempo on that. I'm going to go rook b1 check, king takes, and get another queen. But actually, even with 2 queens, I can't really, I'm in a bit of a pickle. Because I haven't got any more checks of note, and he's threatening some very dangerous things. So, yeah, 2 queens can be overrated. If you get the opportunity, 3 is probably a little bit better, I think. So here we go. Oh my God, what have I done? This is a real dragon, by the way. So all these really nice games that we've been bringing, the slightly one-sided illustrative nice controlled games. These are the crazy ones that tend to happen elsewhere. That's the other flip side, I guess. But then there's not such a flip side if you win. So essentially, he played the move rook to h4 now. I noticed that I could go, after this, I could go king takes g7, which I did. So now he has to take my queen. There's nothing else he can do. So he takes my queen, but I take back. So now on the exchange, and temporarily a pawn up, and he's got no checks with his queen. So he took this pawn on a7, but now I have quite a nice move. Queen a5, which keeps an eye on his bishop, but more to the point.
That's
I'm threatening there. And actually, there's no way
there's nothing to do with that, right? Yeah.
No, and actually, he very sportingly just played queen f2 and allowed me to checkmate.
Sweet.
Nice guy.
Wow.
Nice game. Crazy game of chess. Wow. And that is like a real, I can tell you.
Yeah.
When I looked at that rook takes f6, I thought I wouldn't have been in such a jolly mood if that had happened. After all that, putting all that effort into that game there.
You would have chosen a different game for today, even maybe.
I think that's fair to say. Is that right?
Oh,
yeah,
crazy.
Yeah. So the whole yeah. So the annoying thing, so basically, I'm wondering now, does that make, because I played that line, because I covered that line previously, last one, does that make me like a YouTube influencer or something?
You are YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all of them, the influencer. There's will be grabbings of this situation where the bishop is taking the going to c5 at one point. No, was it earlier or was it c4? I don't know. c4, I think, yeah. And then, yeah, and that is your start of the dragon career, I would say. But you have your dragon career anyway, so it doesn't matter. You don't have to prove anybody anything.
No.
But
I'm
yeah.
thinking of
what are you thinking of?
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I'm halfway through that game. I was thinking, couldn't I have played the French defense? That's a bit more my time is ticking away, and I'm thinking these positions are so complicated.
Next month, the French Dragon with Chris Ward.
Yeah, who knows what's going to come up next month. Anyway, I hope everyone's enjoyed it, and keep going with that. You know, hopefully there'll be some more developments in that line. I'm not sure my nerves can take too many more outings in there. I might have to come up with something else next time around. But there we go.
But that's what chess is, the fun part, as you mentioned. You mentioned it from the very beginning. Always, you said, like, this is the dragon. This is what you're getting into if you really want to learn this. And this is a big fun part of chess after
I've been above board all along, I have to say. Absolutely right.
All right.
So good luck, everybody, with that.
See you next month. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you, people.